When I reach 1000 subscribers I will be giving away a $25 Amazon gift card away. To enter, like, subscribe and leave a comment below. Posted by u/contarcter. Building an apartment for stepson. Runs off with everything but ends up owning everything of stepson in the long run. Hello Reddit people. First time posting on this area of the site. I have been reading these posts for a while now and found out recently of a story that my mother told me about my great grandfather. I got more information about this from my grandmother, who confirmed the story to me and added more details that my mom forgot about it, as this happened when my mom was young. Sorry if this is long, but I need to set up details to understand the story well. The summary is at the bottom. So this is about my great grandfather, who I called Pop Pop, who was on my mother's side. He was a farmer growing up with his 12 brothers and sisters. He had a large family and was the middle child. He quit school when he was in 3rd grade to help out with the family's farm. After he turned 16 he worked for a plumber who would sell the business to him later on. When he was in his late 20s he met and years later married his wife. His wife, my great grandmother, or Mimi as my mother called her, was from a very wealthy family and was 10 years older than he was. Unlike Pop Pop, she was an only child and she was a widow from a very young age, as she also had an adult son, my great uncle Bob, not his real name of course, at the time. Mimi's parents didn't live very long and had died early due to illness along with her first husband. I'm not sure what they died of, I think it was TB. The fact that she didn't have to worry about money helped her raise her son as a single mother, as she didn't have to work. When her son was 18 he met a girl at college and they got married within a few months. Mimi didn't really care for her, we will call Jenny, and she clearly saw that she was just in it for the money, as Bob was Mimi's only child at the time. Jenny was from high class family with money. When my great grandparents got married, she gave birth to my grandmother. It was an unusual birth as Mimi was almost 40 at the time and was very unusual for her to turn out okay. Pop Pop was a very kind man, and even though Mimi had a lot of money, he felt that it was her money and he would still work for a living to provide. They lived very averagely. If you looked at their house you wouldn't be able to tell that they were millionaires. At the time, they were living in a 2-bedroom house. My grandmother was only a baby at the start of the Great Depression. Mimi was not affected that much due to it, but Jenna's family was affected as they made most of their money on Wall Street and banks that started closing. Jenna's father killed himself when he lost all his money, and Jenna's mother soon died after that. Jenny had 2 other siblings who were all older and were on the other side of the country with no way to contact them or get to them. Bob and Jenny were homeless. When Bob and Jenny called, Pop Pop told them to come live with them, no problem whatsoever. When Bob and Jenny came over, Pop Pop gave them the whole upstairs, pretty much kicking his family out onto the 1st floor, and renovated and added on the house so they could come and go without waking his new baby up. He added an extra bedroom, a kitchen, bathroom, everything. Bob and Jenny were having a hard time finding work due to the depression, but Pop Pop told him not to worry, stay as long as you like until you can get back on your feet. This went on for about a year until one day he noticed that it had been a while since he heard anything. While it was pretty typical to not see them every day, he hadn't spoken or even heard anything for about 2 weeks. He opened the door that he built between the 2 living spaces and saw the area empty. The furniture, bathroom fixtures, the stove, everything, stuff that he bought and stuff that they brought with them. He had no clue what happened and called the police as he thought something was wrong. The police caught up with them 2,000 miles away, living in Florida. It turns out Jenny's uncle died and left her with a huge sum of money, pretty much being able to rebuild their life overnight before the Great Depression. As soon as they collected the money, both Bob and Jenny moved out of the house and took everything with them, including Pop Pop and Mimi's items. Pop Pop was angry. He didn't care about being paid back. He just wanted his items he had let them borrow, and just a goodbye. Just let them know that they were leaving or something. If they asked for the items he wouldn't have had much of a problem, but he got no word from them and stole the items. As the stuff was easy to replace, he didn't want to press charges and drag out the mess. Mimi and him pretty much stopped communications with Bob and Jenny due to this. About 25 years later, Mimi has been tested positive for stage 4 cancer. At this time, my grandmother had given birth to my mother and was living in her own house with my grandfather. After she was tested positive, Pop and Mimi sold their house, the same house, to live with my grandmother, to be taken care of. My grandfather redesigned the basement of his house to have the two living in it. My grandmother had known that she had a half-brother named Bob and his wife Jenny, but that was about it. Mimi gave my grandmother his last known number. She wanted to at least try and tell them that she had stage 4 cancer and not much time left. My grandmother placed a call in and found out what had happened between the 25 years. Bob and Jenny never had any kids, but they still had her uncle's money. One thing about Bob and Jenny was that they were smart with the money and invested in it, whereas Mimi never invested in her money, nor did Pop. They just let it sit. My grandmother was happy that she was finally going to meet her brother after all this time. However, they never showed up, even though they said they were going to. My mother said that the first time she saw them was at the funeral. Mimi passed away 2 months later, and my grandmother called them to let them know where it was. So they got to the funeral, and the first thing out of Bob's mouth was, "So what is in the will?" Not even a hello. My grandmother had all greeted them, as she didn't know the history and why they disappeared. Plus my grandmother was too overly nice to family and was putting them next to the family seating when they saw Pop. Pop then said to sorry, only family is allowed to sit up front. Bob and Jenny started to contest when they saw the funeral guide. My grandmother was listed as an only child with nothing saying Bob or Jenny was related. It turned out that both Mimi and Pop were angry by how they were treated all those years ago, so in Mimi's will and funeral arrangements were made to disown her son. They were strangers to the two. Bob and Jenny blew their top, and while my grandmother tried to cool things down, they left. Mimi's will left 85% to Pop and 15% of it to my grandmother. It even made references that Bob and Jenny would get nothing and were disowned. Both tried to fight it, but it didn't work. However, I'm still not done with the revenge. This part is more natural development than anything else. My grandmother still kept in contact with her brother outside of Pop's wishes. Pop still didn't tell her what happened, since he kept saying that he had no son and that she knew he wouldn't approve. My grandmother, my grandfather and my mother even visited them at their house during a vacation. My mother said that he always seemed two-faced along with Jenny. They would act nice, but it was more of an act. My mother brought this up, but my grandmother always shot it down. My grandmother was naive, and she heard from Bob on what happened between the two. Bob's story was that after a year, Jenny's uncle died and left them money. It wasn't a lot, a big lie, but enough to move out. When they went to tell Pop about it, he blew up on them leaving and demanded that he wanted the money to pay for rent. Another lie. Pop never asked for money for a room, that he built them along with the labor and construction of the area. They had to leave under the cover of night to be protected from him, and that he brainwashed Mimi into disowning him and only came back because she was dying, which also was a lie. They didn't show up until the funeral and asked about the will when they first got there. My mother remembers clearly. Since Pop owned 85%, he still had the majority of the money. Grandma wanted to give part of her money, but she had since spent a majority of it buying a house and doing major renovations to it. She would give him the money, but it would be after Pop passed away. Since Grandma wanted to give money to her brother, they wrote up a contract that after Pop passing the money that Grandma got, 50% of it would go to her brother. So they waited and waited. That never came. What happened is too crazy enough not to tell. By this point, when the contact was made, my grandmother was in her early 40s. Bob and Jenny was in their mid to late 50s, while Pop was in his 70s. Most of Pop's siblings had passed away, and his health was always questionable. He smoked cigars, drank and chewed tobacco on top of having bad knees, so at the time, we thought he had only a while left to live. He lived to be 103 years old. Bob and Jenny passed away around 20 years after the contract was signed by them and my grandmother, and since Bob and Jenny had no kids and Jenny's other siblings passed away with no kids on their own, their money was given to my grandmother after no one else claimed it. Since Jenny and Bob had no will, I'm not sure the details of how she did it, but she did get it. My grandmother later on found out that what they were telling her about the house was a lie. As she was cleaning out Pop's room, she found the old police records and pictures about the apartment along with Bob and Jenna's records about how much money they got. All of the money was wasted away years later by Pop. He got into heavy depression after Mimi passed away. He drank and gambled most of the money away trying to ease the pain. So even if he died later on, Bob would not have gotten much, if any of it. My grandma didn't know about Pop's money until she took over his finances when he went into a nursing home at the age of 102. Yes, at 100 he was still pretty active with his finances. TLDR. Great grandfather builds an apartment for homeless stepson. They run off in the middle of the night after an uncle dies, giving the money to stepson's wife and take everything in the apartment. Great grandfather and great grandmother disown the stepson with nothing in the will. Uncle cons his sister to give him the remaining money, but great grandfather outlives uncle and uncle's money goes to his sister. Posted by u/_marine. Want to go on vacation and not pay us for the work. Won't be home for a few days after informing us. Sure. My grandpa is on my do not ever fuck with list. In any way. Short list. Taught Shotokan overseas in Korea. One of the highest ranked black belts outside of Japan. I have seen security footage of some of his bar fights. It's legit. Was a personal bodyguard during the 70s for some governors in our state. Worked construction for decades. One of 2 master carpenters in my state, which leads to this story. During summers, I would work with Gramp doing a lot of his manual monkey labor. Shingles up to the roof, mix concrete, sand floors, keep everything tidy, etc. He'd been screwed over the years as many general and subcontractors are, and as the years went by his contracts for work go more and more specific, i.e. payments on a certain schedule, new/unexpected cost, and how they are dealt with, etc. One particular job started out pretty normal. He's hired to build a new deck with a new patio/driveway patio for this guy. Let's call him Shitbrain. New construction, newer house, easy job. Gramps had even done work for him in the past, no problems. Deck is to be partly covered, 10x50 on the front of the house, 4 feet up with concrete stairs. Brand new door, brand new picture window, 4x8. Driveway is to be stained, freshly poured between the new deck and garage grandpa built a few years ago. Guy was even going on vacation for a few weeks. We can get the job done in those 3 weeks, if we bust it. Guy pays 50% of the estimated cost up front, and was to pay the remaining 50% over the agreed time. Now, this first payment covered all material for the original estimate, and paid us basically minimum wage for the hours we'd put in. The next few installments would cover the subcontractor for pouring the driveway, and the remaining hourly wages. Weekend 1 passed, no agreed payment. HMM. Guy's on vacation. Maybe he forgot to set up auto pay. Whatever. Sent him pictures on AOL email. The original concrete stairs had been removed. New door was in place. Deck was framed out. But we didn't hear from Shitbrain. Weekend 2 passed. Shit, no pay yet, but work needs to be done. Concrete guys are here for the new slab and stairs. Let's get it done so we can move on to new jobs. Subcontractor is a long-time family friend and distant relative. Call him to me. Does us a favor and pause/stains on an IOU. Send more pictures on AOL. No response from Shitbrain. Week 3. We've finished our work 2 days early. Subcontractor has finished their work. It looks amazing. Up there on a nice hill. But we haven't been paid for this work. Gramp finally gets Shitbrain on the phone. Gramp, hey Shitbrain, how's was vacation? Blah blah blah. Skip forward 3 to 5 minutes. Gramps is a talker and lived in the vacation state for a few years. Great. Glad you had a great time while I was busted it here. Holy hell, it's been hot. What did you think of the work? Shitbrain. Oh, it looks great. We'll be home later day after tomorrow. We are having a get together with Ziz. Gramp. Well, glad you're going to enjoy it. Oh hey, seems like your bank didn't pay us on the schedule agreement. Shitbrain. So. Gramp, excuse me? Shitbrain, so what? I not paying you the rest of the money. Work's done. Tough luck, you old fucker. Gramp, I understand. Click. Gramp, well op. Let's get to work. Oh, and get to me on the phone. Shitbrain had that large garage Gramp had built years ago, and the guy let us use to store equipment while they were out. First, the brand new door was removed and placed in the garage. Then, each piece of the brand new deck was removed and placed into the garage. Sadly, the posts were 36 and deep, but hey, a 4x4 truck pulled those out of the ground nice and good after a bit of shoveling. Those were also placed into the garage. Window was also removed from the frame and placed on top of this pile. Deconstruction is much faster than construction after all. Tommy was rather unhappy as well about not getting paid, but hey, we found out that the new stairs we poured moved well enough across the new driveway / patio. And some bleach took care of the stain we put onto the patio. Sadly, it had a few chips in it from all the ruckus, and someone made the time to take a diamond saw and cut all the way through the seams. Sadly, it'll now settle at an uneven rate. But all the material Shitbrain paid for, he got to keep. We even went into the garage in the evening and made sure his front door was locked, you know, for security. Even the few tools we needed for the job which Shitbrain paid for stayed in the garage. Fast forward 2 days, Shitbrain comes home and throws a shitstorm. It had stormed, and his act had been running non-stop with the increase of draft into the front of the house. Of course, he threatens Gramps with a lawsuit and the police, which just makes Gramp laugh. A close relative was the assistant chief of police in our small town, unbeknownst to Shitbrain. We did everything we were contractual obligated and paid to do. All the equipment, all the materials were in Shitbrain's possession. That is, after all, what he paid us for. Shitbrain blustered a lot, but it did fuck all. Fast forward a bit. No one in the local union will deal with the guy. Gramps and Timmy are both pretty well respected and do a lot of great work around town. Someone from out of town ends up back fixing the issues and does a shit job of it. Done. TLDR, if you want to fuck over the general contractor, do it after you get home and string it out. Don't fuck them over before you're home from vacation. GCs and SCs generally have to move quickly to the next job if they want to make $sign, and the vast majority of the time won't have the funds or time to try and collect. We have no idea why Shitbrain tried to pull that shit, but since Shitbrain had paid us well and on time for the garage job, Gramp ignored the inner voice. When I reach 1,000 subscribers, I will be giving away a $25 Amazon gift card away. To enter, like, subscribe and leave a comment below.